Let us remember. Again, from the Hebrew Scriptures, Lamentations 3, verses 21 through 23. But this I call to mind. But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. Your mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. You have lived long enough to know that memory can be heavy. You have also lived long enough to witness the worst things bring about the best. Midnight became your morning. So memory can be heavy, but memory is also holy. For Black people, memory is not just about the past, it's about survival. It's how we carry our stories in a world that tries to erase us. The writer of Lamentations is sitting in the rubble. Jerusalem has fallen. The city is burned. The people are stunned. Hope has dried up, and yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Hope doesn't come from what he sees. Hope comes from what he remembers. I remember as well, and it's why I have hope. I was born in 1954, the year of Brown versus Board of Education, and the year Ruby Bridges was born. Ruby Bridges was just 6 years old when federal marshals escorted her past screaming mobs of white adults so she could go to school in New Orleans. I didn't have marshals with me when I integrated my school in San Francisco in 1959. No cameras, no headlines, just a little Black child in kindergarten. It wasn't dramatic, but it was still a battlefield. It's the kind of racism that doesn't yell, but it murmurs. It hides behind smiles and routines. It cuts without saying a word. And this I call to mind. I was 4 years old when I entered that classroom. The toys were our daily promised land. Our teacher said that we could play there after snack and after nap. But day after day, I was called last. The best toys were gone. The message was clear before I had language for it. You are always last. And then I was 6 when a white boy hit me in the head with a board and a nail. I still have the scar. I ran to my mother, my face covered in blood. I wanted her to scream, to storm out like a righteous Black woman that I knew she could be, but she didn't. She stayed calm, almost quiet. Silence was survival for Black women who had grown up in Jim Crow, North Carolina, where outrage could get your children killed. She was fighting with her presence, not her volume. That too was a war. And this I call to mind. My father, David, had left the South after a lynching in his hometown. He joined the Navy to escape. He and my mother, Ruth, boarded a train west toward a future they had to build from scratch. Even on that train, a porter drew a curtain between them and the white passengers, enforcing segregation. They were fleeing American terror, the kind born from slavery, legalized through Jim Crow, and maintained by violence. And let me be clear, fascism is not foreign to these shores. It has always had a drawl, a badge, a law code, a respectable accent in a courtroom. We need to call to mind what history has tried to forget. In the 1930s, Nazi lawyers studied U.S. race law, including segregation and anti-miscegenation statutes, as they drafted the Nuremberg race laws that stripped German Jews of citizenship and banned mixed marriages. Black codes became blueprints. Separate but equal became Aryan purity. Fascism didn't just arrive in America. America helped write the playbook. I know it means a lot to you seeing people by the thousands hit the streets, including so many courageous white allies across the country, here. I'm breathless. My heart is on fire for the grassroots resistance. Everyday people refusing to be silent, daring to dream of something better. We need this. But I would be even more excited if more organizers, clergy, public officials, if they acknowledged the root causes of this pain. Just one of the roots is the U.S. support for the unhinged state of Israel. We're aware that the Israeli Defense Force trains U.S. law enforcement agencies, including ICE. But the connection runs even deeper. ICE has established an office in Tel Aviv. And Customs and Border Patrol also works closely with the IDF. When I watched Alex Pretty's killers laughing over his body, I couldn't help but think, this is what we see in Gaza, a shared theology of domination, a common ritual of dehumanization. And if you're in bed with Israel, you're supporting ICE. Of course, the main root is white supremacy. Two words that elected officials and clergy seem to hate saying are white and Zionism. You can probably think of other unnamed roots. And this I call to mind. And I have to say this, even though you know it, I need to call it to mind. Before chattel slavery and Jim Crow, indigenous peoples lost their land and lives. The United States was built on broken treaties, stolen lands, and native blood. The genocide of native nations on Turtle Island cleared the way for the plantations. The reason the U.S. invaded Mexico was to expand slave territory, to create more space for enslavement. The Trail of Tears cleared the way for cotton fields. Anti-Blackness and anti-indigeneity are intertwined. One dehumanizes the body, the other takes the land. And this I call to mind. You can see the machinery of empire is still at work. It's just been given a new look. Merchants of terror raid homes and raid workplaces. Community observers in Minneapolis and here in Santa Barbara risk their safety to film and document abuses. Border and detention policies cage migrants and children. Militarized agents gas protesters in the streets. Legislatures pass voter suppression laws and weaken civil rights protections. School boards and politicians ban books and erase curricula about slavery, indigenous genocide, and queer Black history. It's fascism. It separates families at the borders, floods our schools with lies, and criminalizes telling the truth. But this I call to mind. We have seen this before. We have resisted before. We have survived this before. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. Your mercies never come to an end. See, we were wounded, but we were never abandoned. We were treated as last, but God never forgot us. My daddy's reel-to-reel tapes sent to our family from far-off Navy ships were his way of saying, I'm still here. I love you. That was mercy. Try to get through this. My mother's voice, singing spirituals that once coded escape routes and survival plans, was her anointing oil. That was mercy. You might have heard me mention before that scholars in the African American Theological Academy have described these songs of the enslaved and segregated Black people as a kind of third testament, a living witness of suffering and liberation sung into history. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Tell Martha not to moan. When my mommy sang, I felt centuries in her songs. They were not just songs, they were scriptures sung under surveillance, testimony in tune, resistance disguised as worship. Hold to his hand, God's unchanging hand. Hold to his hand, God's unchanging hand. Why don't you build your hopes on things eternal? Hold to God's unchanging hand. Not just songs, they were scripture. Mercy doesn't mean that the suffering stops. It means that we are not alone in the fire. New every morning, new every morning, new every morning. Morning came when I realized that I didn't have to inherit a whitewashed gospel, that my faith could be anchored in Black survival, Black joy, and Black freedom, not just white respectability. Shella's not with us here today. She's traveling. But Shella would remember when morning came as we stood on stage together proudly in high school representing our African consciousness youth group, Operation Blastoff, even when my mother, influenced by Jim Crow fears, was worried about what my white teachers might think. Morning came when I stepped into the pulpit and my parents joined my church. We learned together that faith isn't about avoiding trouble. It's about making good trouble in the name of love and justice. Morning comes when we decolonize our theology. Morning comes when we embrace the Jesus who flipped tables as well as the one who turned cheeks. Morning comes when we remember that faith was never meant to domesticate us. It was meant to deliver us. And this I call to mind. For generations, we were taught to survive by being first. W.E.B. Du Bois spoke of a talented tenth, a small group of highly educated Black leaders whose excellence would uplift the race. And we were rightly moved by the firsts. Du Bois, the first Black American to earn a PhD from Harvard. Jackie Robinson, the first Black man to break Major League Baseball's color line. Thurgood Marshall, the first Black U.S. Supreme Court justice who argued Brown versus Board before he joined the court. Shirley Chisholm, the first Black woman elected to Congress. Sidney Poitier, the first Black man to win an Academy Award for Best Actor. Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first Black woman on the Supreme Court. Maybe we needed those firsts. They inspire us. They matter. But they also trained us, often unconsciously, to measure our worth by how close we could stand to white approval, white institutions, white applause. More of us have come to see that Black excellence by itself is not salvation. Degrees can't save us. Titles can't save us. Representation cannot save us. Black faces in high places will not save us. It can bring resources and a measure of protection in a violent world, but it cannot give us the deep safety and comfort our souls need. Black excellence will not salvage a system designed to destroy us. The torrential rains of white supremacy and white Zionism are trying to drown us. How can Black excellence matter when the system is flooding the country with race hate? So we honor the firsts, even if they are firsts within the system, but we refuse the lie that we must constantly prove ourselves within the system. More of us are noticing that oppression has done at least as much psychological damage to the oppressing classes as to us. This is a terrible symbiosis. Black people are not here to be exceptional for somebody else's gaze. We are here to be free together. Our goal is not just to be the first Black person in the room. Our goal is to build a world where no Black child has to be the only Black person in the room, where our dignity is not up for debate. This I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Our worth is not earned by excellence. It is given by God. Our value is not secured by being a first. It is secured by being loved by the one whose mercies are new every morning. And right now, we are living through another shaking. The books are banned, the borders are militarized, prisons are full, courts are stacked, truth on trial. Scripture says that the things which can be shaken will be shaken, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. So we say to disinformation, fall. We say to false gospels, fall. Let the idols of supremacy fall. Let truth remain. Let love remain. Let justice remain. Let us remain. The work of the people on the streets of Minneapolis and here locally, organizers, clergy, neighbors, students, who stand outside with their phones and cameras documenting ISIS raids, police abuses, state violence. They are writing a new chapter of sacred memory, refusing to let suffering stay hidden. Their footage is the opposite of a book ban. It is a living archive of truth and will remain. And so I say to you, my dear ones, if they can stand in the street with a camera, we can stand in the world with a testimony, and at the very least give a few dollars to groups like VC Defensa and SB Resiste. So, yes, I remember the trauma. I carry the scars. I remember my parents' story. I remember my story. I'm just about done here. But I remember being 3 years old, waking up in an upside down car after 22-year-old mommy crashed on a trip to see the grandparents. 22-year-old daddy was taking a break from driving. The ambulance took us to a funeral home in Arkansas operated by a Black woman because the hospitals were whites only. I later learned that our accident happened because motels and hotels from California to North Carolina were whites only. So we had to keep driving without a safe place to rest. But this I call to mind. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. Your mercies never come to an end. They're new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. You have lived long enough to know that memory can be heavy, but you've also lived long enough to witness that the worst things can bring about the best. Midnight becomes your morning. Hope doesn't come from what you're seeing. Hope comes from what you're remembering.
Thank you, Pastor Moore. That was amazing. And some.
you know what I mean? I feel a response to this. Um, I would love to hear from everybody else. And just the one thought that came to mind is, oh well, there are two thoughts. The only reason that we suffer and struggle is because if we didn't suffer or struggle, we wouldn't need each other, you know? Um, and we suffer and struggle so that when we get to the other side of it, we can share that with somebody else. And we can't share it with somebody else if we don't call it to mind. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people will try to put the past away as if it didn't happen. But then if you don't look at it, you can't change it, you know? So that was amazing. Caroline, what are your thoughts? Sis?
Um, I take so many notes, and it's funny by the beginning, by the end, like the notes at the beginning feel so far away because you've covered so much and shared so much. But I was just thinking because Pastor, I've heard the story of the car crash before, and I was just thinking like it's so important to sort of keep those deep sort of essential truths about your family alive. Like I don't think I ever met either of your parents, but like I can feel them. You tell these brief stories, and it takes maybe a couple of minutes to tell this story, but it's so essential to the truth of who your family is and the heart of your family. And there's something about that. Like we have to hold on to these essential truths, and we do that by this kind of oral history. It's like not even, it's like, the way you used to sit around a fire thousands of years ago and share your history and share the truths about who you are. And I don't know, there's just something about that that just feels like if we're going to get through these next few years, we have to hold on to these core sort of truths about who we are. And you only really know those by hearing something beautiful and something true shared. And I don't know. I just like I never, I never met your parent. I think maybe I met your mom, but I feel them. I feel those 22-year-olds like and like how brave they were and how scared they must have been and just vibrating with the urgency of keeping their children alive and it's just I learned more from that story than from any history book about what that era was like. And I don't know, I'm just rattling on, but it was beautiful and it was impactful. And I think there's something important there about how we keep our stories alive for each other, and we're
Yeah.
going to need those stories moving forward.
Yeah, that's why I've been writing so much these past few months because I want my grandchildren, when they get curious, to be able to connect with more than banned books.
I have something to say. I love you, Pastor Moore, and I'm just gonna say this. I love Jesus the revolutionary. Up on a cross, the revolutionary who stood up for what was right. And if you're learning about Jesus, guess what? Jesus is in you. Jesus isn't going to be alone on that cross because there ain't going to be a cross because the majority of us have a moral compass that says this isn't right. You know what? Hey, revolution isn't a bad thing. Revolution's needed when things are getting bad. And it's not just getting bad. It's at that point now. And so to speak truth to Jesus, look at man, if I was part of a church that complied with everything that was going on right now, I don't think I would have been really learning about Jesus. Because here's the truth. I love our church because when things didn't comply with what the truth, when they say the truth is the word is the truth. Well, check this out. It speaks to you when it's true. And when a church tries to tell me that I've got to exclude anybody, I don't see where Jesus said that, not once. In fact, quite the fucking opposite. Excuse my language. So it pisses me off to be gaslit by somebody on a pulpit How are you going to spend an hour trying to convince me about this guy and then go completely backwards? Like, what sort of logic is that? And so I won't be gaslit by religion. But I will believe in Jesus because guess what? That's the truth. So I'm sorry, I just had to speak up a little bit.
Language excused. And, you'll remember last Sunday when I said that the use of expletives is actually scriptural, and
Yeah.
the control of language is crowd control. You can't deal with your pain if you can't name it.
Or flip
That's
some
right.
tables.
Flip some tables.
Yeah.
I got a little something.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, so it's funny you brought up Debbie Dubois today. Sarah and I were just talking about Dubois and the Talented Tenth, and yesterday. And the funny part I was remarking about Dubois was and the Talented Tenth is about 15 years later, 20 years later. He was in conversation at that moment when he was talking about the Talented Tenth with Booker T. Washington, saying that we just need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. But Dubois came out 15, 20 years later saying that, hey, I'm wrong about the Talented Tenth. The Talented Tenth is not going to be it. It's the power of the people. It's every person is valuable in this fight. And so saying that we need to find our strengths in our numbers together, not just in our leaders at the top. So, and I appreciate your remarks today. We're so much about that in our power of the people, and it just, I don't know, something maybe is in the air yesterday and today about that, because I don't know. Yeah, Sarah and I were just talking pretty much word for word what that you were saying about that. And then also I've been thinking about the conversation was actually about nostalgia, so that was very interesting. And your sermon kind of remarked about memory at the end. And I've been thinking about, after our conversation, the opposite of nostalgia is amnesia. And I heard shoot, I can't think of her name right now. Black Lives Matter, Opal Tometi, Patrice Colors, and
Selective amnesia.
thank you. Yeah. Dad brain, I'm getting there, I'm in pregnant brain mode.
A little early.
Patrice Colors, Opal Tometi, and who's the third woman that started Black Lives Matter?
Alicia Garza.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Just brain fart. Sorry. Yeah, Alicia Garza was the first person I heard talk about white amnesia. And and there's white nostalgia too. I think nostalgia is really big in whiteness. And the thing there is this selective, they get to select and pick and choose when they remember and when they don't. And they're clinging to the past, clinging to something that held them in power. And I've been reflecting on this in the way of how the foundation of ICE is in slave patrols. And white amnesia has us forgetting what the roots of ICE is. It is slave patrols. It is the roots of the Atlantic slave trade, and going back to the western shores of Africa, and pinning people against their own communities. And so, we see other examples of that, and how to truly find, like, who is the community, who is the power, who is one with us. And so, and not creating a litmus test, but just reminding ourselves of the people that are with us, and what memory does for that. So I don't know, just really resonating with your idea of memory today, and the idea of mercy too, and how that attaches to memory. So I just really appreciate that grounding today. It's met me this week.
Thank you, Matt. Hey, Julius.
Yes, I just want to echo what Matt was just saying, and also thank Dr. Moore for his message, memory as a form of resistance. And Matt, just to expand upon the roots of ICE is the slave patrols. And if you notice in the popular dialogue, even amongst the protesters and the resistance forces and people that are critical of this current regime, there is an attempt to allude to what was occurring in Nazi Germany as a point of reference. That again is a form of erasure, because you are using a point of reference that is European in nature, as if that is the only reference point for tragic, horrific things that have happened to oppressed peoples. And by eliding the fact that there is a direct point of origin for these ICE terrorists, which is indigenous to this system that we call the United States, i.e. slave patrols, that is again, racism doing work. Meaning it's not a coincidence that in our zeitgeist, the reference frame we want to use for dehumanization is when it happens to Europeans by Europeans. So again, and I will repeat again, something that Dr. Moore mentioned in his message, a call to the faith leaders. Where are you at?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you?
Preach it.
From the Pope on down.
Say it.
Where? And again, Christianity is on trial. In Minneapolis, there was a protest at a church, and it all kind of came to a head. The anti-Blackness that is at the heart of what we are experiencing today. It all came to a head this week, what it's really all about. There was a protest about a week ago organized by Black activists at a church where the pastor was one of the commanders of the ICE forces in that area. The pastor was. And the force of the government is now coming down, not only upon the protesters, but also on the journalists who covered the protest. But this is not unfamiliar to Black people, these fascist tactics. It may be unfamiliar to other folks who are of European descent, but this is what America is. And this is what Christianity is, where the Ku Klux Klansmen are the pastors and the preachers on Sundays. And by sundown, they're hanging men and women, boys and girls on tree branches with crosses and Bibles. Christianity is on trial.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
White Christian nationalism is that this man, Julius. If I could get through here and hug you right now.
Looks like Leslie has her hand up.
Wow, nobody's called me that in a long time. But
Oh, sorry.
no, it's my legal first name. But anyway, I love what you said about the Christianity and the church being on trial, because even the ones that aren't looking like Christian nationalists, they're not speaking out. They're just quietly saying, let's pray it away. You're sitting up there and they're just like, you know what, you guys, but we're all made in God's image, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you need to speak out in the injustices. Don't sit up there and teach us about Jesus speaking out against injustices and then turn around and be silent about what's going on. A. B, the two journalists that they arrested were who? Black folks. Mm-hmm. Don Lemon and Porter, I believe her name was.
Georgia Fort.
Fort, thank you.
Georgia Fort.
Fort, thank you very much. And that's not a coincidence. That's not a coincidence at all. And for those of us that are allies to this, we are speaking out, but we've got to keep going, because light always swallows up the darkness, and we've got to bring that. We absolutely have to do that. And for somebody to tell me recently, why are you such a blowhard? Why are you out there protesting? Why are you walking the streets? Why are you talking this and that? It's not doing any good. And I said, nothing gets handed to you unless you demand it. Don't ever tell me that our voices and that our protests and that our rising up. That's why that little boy got released this morning with his father, because people rose up and said, this is not okay. And there's still more that needs to happen. And we still have to continue to speak out. But I'll be damned if I'm going to let somebody tell me who I am and how I believe just by looking at me. Because my siblings came from Jim Crow, Oklahoma. And I'm happy that I was born and raised here. But I had no idea that even in the city of Santa Barbara, my homeboy, Billy Davison, some of y'all know him, told me that he was being bussed in Santa Barbara, I had no idea that these children were also being bused in my town, because I'm sitting up there, I'm going to school, and back in those days, pretty integrated. I was in class at Harding School, West Side, by the way. And we were fairly integrated. In fact, our teacher was even Japanese. And to be told that some of those kids didn't even live in my neighborhood, I was oblivious to that. I didn't realize that. So I really appreciate I really appreciate that. But the one thing that I did see last night, I don't know if any of you saw it, this man in Santa Barbara at where they were at City Hall protesting, was screaming and yelling because he was a veteran and how dare you, blah, 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 and this and that. And he was screaming at the protesters. And this guy walked up to him. He said, bro, all I want to do is give you a hug. It's okay, man. I understand that you're upset. And they hugged it out, and it completely changed the atmosphere, like completely changed it. And I wanted to say that because the instinct in me is to really just fight and kick ass and do all that stuff. But I think some of these people need a hug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peter,
I'm done on my rant.
that was excellent. That was excellent, Leslie. Thank you.
Girl.
All right, Peter.
I'm kind of the new kid here, so I just don't want to take a lot of your time, but I'm really, really greatly enjoying the emphasis on the healing power of memory. Memory is like David said, you don't get hope from what you're seeing, you get hope from what you're remembering. And I'm going to say a brief statement about the neurological quality of memory, how memory works. The neurologists have told us that we do not remember chunks and blocks of events. We remember the memories are distributed all the way through all parts of our brain. And every time we remember something, we're creating it all over again. We're piecing it together from all the little parts. And so memory is always creative. Now, if you're a Jim Crow person or KKK person, the criterion around which you're building your memory is this racist lens, this dark, evil center, and then everything confirms that and your memory proves that. But if you have the trauma healing people say that our memories are pardon my voice, our memories are partial, like Swiss cheese, there's holes in them. And when you do when trauma therapists have you go into a memory, they have you first establish what David often does here about a place of peace and comfort and the presence of Jesus and the presence of your value in his care. And then that's often is the missing piece of your memory. And then when you go through your memory, instead of being traumatizing, the rehearsing of the memory can be healing, because you're always putting the memory together. And you can even select some of the pieces that you put in your memory. Now, I'm not great on lucid dreaming and all that, but it's kind of like that. You can make your memory, it's not actually erasing the past or changing the past, but almost. It's right up to the limit of making the past different, because you include that dimension that you didn't see of his care and what he's doing with this and how he's purifying and how he's making things beautiful out of this terrible tragedy. It doesn't minimize the horror of the tragedy or the injustice of it or the pain, but it does bring a healing because it includes it in the overall benevolent plan of the Father through what you're remembering to bring you to a place of wholeness and holiness and beauty and community and all this. So memory is by nature creative. And I think that when David says you're getting hope not from what you're seeing, but from what you're remembering, it's because we're held in his hands and we're in this whole basket of memory. And the whole narrative of Scripture is an encouraging story that we can remember. And I'll close with one saying. I have a friend who's a historian, and he says, I'll close with this. He said, history is not about the past. History is about the present and the future. And what you do with the past and the present and the future, that's the purpose for studying history. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Yeah.
Scott.
Yeah, first of all, I want you to know that I share all the values you have, and I believe in everything everybody said today strongly. And David, your personal story is radically moving, especially myself as a white man who's never dealt with any of that. But I do have a question and a fear that I think about if we had a church again, or if and not online, would we want people to come in and to stop us from praying the way we pray? And it's a hard question for me. I'm big on public forums and things like that, and it's disgusting to have that ICE agent lead that community. But it'd be good to hear a little bit more about that question, the sanctuary question.
Can I say something? I have a thought. Sorry, we both. How about if somebody came into my church and I found out that Pastor Moore was part of that? I would definitely want to know. Because here's the truth. If I'm convicted, this is just me personally. What we teach here and in our church, you know what? If the person who was leading us was saying this about Jesus, but then doing what Pharaoh, or what Caesar was doing, I think that would be information that would be just as crucial as if they were a pedophile.
Flipping the tables.
Yep.
Yeah, but inside the church, I ask. I mean, it can be outside.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because guess what? What is the sanctity of that church if that's a lie?
The thought that I had when you posed that question, imagining protesters coming into our physical space, and then what Jade said came to mind, they'd probably get a hug from the beloved community.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. So I also I would like to share that I just like Jade, my response, if I look back, has always I am a fighter. You know what I mean? If I saw something like that go down,
Go on, girl.
would I have the wherewithal to pause, pray, and use spiritual energy in order to dial it back? You know what I mean? Because when Pastor Moore, when you shared about that kid hitting you with the nail and then your mother, forget about it. Like I felt it. That's what I'm saying. If my
Right.
child had come home to me like that, God bless your mom for the pause that she must have had in that moment to say, am I going to react as well she should, right? Or am I going to respond? Because the ultimate safety of my son and my ability to provide for my son is more important. That's like that put the oxygen mask on yourself before the child. So like I am learning this business of de-escalating. I have opened my mind, my stubborn ass, long enough to say maybe going in guns blazing is not going to work. Maybe I need to, if I look up to Martin Luther King Jr. so much, maybe I need to try to walk in that direction instead of saying, well, that's them with the nonviolence. You know what I'm saying? That is not me. Somebody pass me a weapon. I don't even need to forget it. Let me not get feisty. So like this business of learning, de-escalating means step back strategically. You know what I mean? It means step back and be strategic about what you're doing. You're not like you're not backing up out of fear. You're backing up out of strategy, out of saying, I remember what's
Exactly.
gonna happen to me if I, So that was great. There's a hand up there. Julius?
And then
And that, excuse me, and then Sonny.
Yeah.
Sonny.
Scott asks a very important question that must be addressed. Again, we are trying to get to another paradigm of thinking. We had a paradigm in this country of slavocracy. That was the reality. Okay, that was the normal. To get to the next level, which is not even something to brag about, which is the past 150 years since slavery, like the actual formal slavery, a paradigm shift had to happen. But for that paradigm shift to happen, how many poor white folk had to literally see their uncles, fathers, brothers, sons die until they got the point that it's not worth it to die for the billionaire class? Okay. The paradigm shift that has to happen is the idea that, look, what Clint was saying, if you are a Christian, you claim to be a Christian, and you're not even just someone amongst you in the church in the pews, your own pastor is dehumanizing, destroying human beings and children, and your complaint is, hey, I was just here to pray. Yeah. You gotta, the paradigm where we're trying to go is that question would not even flash through your mind, right? And I make that point because we're not there yet. So we have to deal with these questions. And I'm not gonna attack someone for raising the question. I'm going to use the question to show that the place we're going as a republic, if we are to stay as a republic, these questions will seem like someone asking, well, gosh, would it be fair if protesters barged into a church to complain about slavery? Like that is not we are in a different place. And it seems like this is a hard question now, but 50 years from now, 100 years from now, if we are successful in this paradigm shift, this will be easy peasy, ladies and gentlemen. And it's important to know there are no safe spaces in this battle. The other side is declared churches, schools, hospitals, homes. They're saying they can go into your home without a warrant.
That's right.
So if there are no safe spaces for us as human beings, there are no safe spaces intellectually for them.
Yep.
Those who are on the side of the terrorists and of evil. And in fact, I challenge the pastor on down to the people in that so-called church. They are not Christians. We have to get to that point. That's why I say Christianity is on top. You have to call people out for what they are. And if you allow them to be imposters in the faith, then you get what you deserve. You get a Trump who is cosplaying as a Christian, and you have millions of people following him as so-called Christians. You have to clean house.
Julius, forgive me. I'm going to cut in for everybody. The thing I jump on, and that's really important, is that safe space. And it's a two-way street, and that's what I fear. People can be condemned. People can come into our church because we believe in gay marriage. People can come in, that's where safe space. Sometimes we need to gather with our own safe space. And Christian nationalism is just offensive, wrong, demeans Jesus and everything Jesus stood for. But I'm struggling with that one element. And maybe I'm completely wrong. And I'm sorry for interrupting, but.
No.
Well, I don't know if it's a matter of right and wrong. Scott, I mean, the question you raised is something that I have struggled with throughout the course of the week. And I think one of the reasons I'm struggling with it is that I have an idea of what church is. And, for me, church is a safe space. And yet at the same time, if one of the pastors is working for ICE, that's not a safe space. That's a dangerous space. So I think there's some complexity there. Yeah.
Sonny, I think Sonny's been waiting for a second.
Hi, I'm Gabby. I am Sonny's partner. And I am originally from Santa Barbara. I was born and raised here and still very well connected to my community. And my family all lives here, but I've also lived in Santa Ana, and I've lived in Orange County for 24 years this month. And It's been, I just hearing like the service today and everyone's words, I really, really needed that. My existence from who I am, being raised to immigrant parents and living in it and seeing it, and also having a career in mental health, like it's all interconnected and it's overwhelming. And so finding a space that I can hear that we need to keep moving forward, and then there's a group effort that's moving forward, is really reassuring. And I know that spiritually, I just really need it. I look at Pastor Moore and other people that have been in this long term, and spirituality is like center to their fight. And so for me, it just reminds me, like, I need to get grounded. I think we often forget about the children that are affected by this every day. I actually manage a psychiatric unit for children. And we have children coming in who like no longer want to live, or are paralyzed by the fear their parents are experiencing. And like treating that firsthand, and us having to maintain focus, and my team having to maintain focus, it becomes really overwhelming when you see your community torn apart.
Right.
So I've been an activist for 20 years, and challenging like large policies, whether they're local or statewide or national. The organization that I'm part of is very, very involved, and we do not follow respectability politics. We really want to speak directly to power. We develop our own people to be in office, which should be short term. You make change, and because I know some folks have talked about like getting a taste of that power and then forgetting of why you're there. I know that the last couple of weeks we've seen a lot of people of color get into positions of power and elected positions, and there's a lot of celebration around that. But we've seen many electeds that once they get into those positions, they maintain status quo. And so we need to continue to challenge them to say, if you're in these positions, you need to be up front. You need to stand and remind yourself of why you went into this position in the first place. So just thank you all for the message today. Really resonated.
And real quick, thank you. Along with Julius's paradigm shift, what you're doing is helping, because that psychological tactic that empire has always used to demonize and to scare people has been useful in the past. But people like yourself who are helping them mentally deal with these things and come out of it stronger, that's an asset that wasn't there 200, 150 years ago. So this is a part of that paradigm.
And to keep them drugged,
Yep.
keep them medicated.
Gabby, the fact that it makes you feel so good to be here is a proof of the importance of us connecting. You know what I mean? That's the hope that keeps us going. It's like the medicine, that we need. So I'm glad you're here.
I love it when I see you on here, Gabby. Keep coming back.
If I can jump in, gosh,
Rosie.
man, so much good stuff. Dang, Julia, I love you so much. I love everyone, but Jade, oh man, imagine the three of us.
And Ana Rosa and Marcy, forget about it.
Even with my cane, I'll say, I'll cut you now. No shame in my game. The barrio, the colonia comes back out. But yeah, my oldest son will say some, Mama, calm down. I'm like, I'm protecting you, son. He's like, I'm a grown ass man, Mama. I said, I know, but you're still my baby. You're still my baby. And I was thinking, Pastor Moore, what because I've heard your testimony, your story, your reality of that encounter, that horrible situation that took place with you. And Mommy restrained from remembrance, like what you were sharing about the power of remembrance. It was not being fearful. It was exactly what you said, Julia. Tactic. Tactic. And that is one thing that we do need to remember, you know, tactic and strategy.
Lose the battle, win the war.
There you go. As pissed off as we may be. And you know, Brother Peter, oh man, God bless you. Scott. What you stated, you know, your question is so valid. We used to belong to a church that Pastor Moore was pastor of before he resigned. And there was all kinds of upheaval there internally, you know. And God bless you, Pastor. But remember that man that used to walk out there with that big old sign, and he was, you know, that older person, and I wanted to hit him with my cane. And you remember that, you know, and you were just like so calm. And you know, my husband Efrain I had already put him in the van, you know, because he was in the wheelchair at that time already, you know. And I'm like, oh no, hell no, buddy, you're not gonna come and, you know, try to impose your racist views, you know, and try to tell us how to be.
Right.
You know, Scott, we are love. Everyone here, and those that we cannot even see, but that are part of us, we are love. So we are part of, Jade, what you said about the hugging. We are love. And so if we were to come back together in an actual building on a regular, that's what we would be showing to everyone. And the haters that would come in, they would just be like, damn, man, you know what? Either I'm going to keep on hating and being a bad person, or I cannot negate the love that I'm feeling here, because that's how powerful it is. And we are free to be who we are. Doesn't the word say, come as you are? Don't clean up your act. Don't wait until this. Don't wait, you know. And it's to the expletives, brother, man. I say, you know, they're used for emphasis. Okay? Emphasis. And sometimes that emphasis, it's gotta be told. You know what? I always say, if you're gonna say, fuck you, Rosie, tell it to my face. Don't tell me behind my back. Tell me to my face where I can see your eyes. We can take care of business like that, you know? And I love it because I keep it clear and 100 when I'm with the inmates. And please, you guys, don't ever stop praying for inmates, okay? Because, man, there is just so much love there. That's God. That's God, you know? And I think about it, and Brother Julius, man, in your position and stuff, and I think, you know, like that mofo sheriff dude, what's his name there in Santa Barbara?
Brown.
I see his picture.
Brown.
Yeah,
Yes,
and I
Brown.
think like he ain't worthy of the name Brown.
Okay.
Anyhow, I think I spoke too much. Love you.
Love you,
Just
Rosie.
enough.
Rosie, you never speak
we have
too
a
much,
couple
girl.
of hands,
Give
and we're
me.
going to have to start. We're going to have to soon give it to Linnea to lead us in communion. But Brigitta's hand has been up for a while.
Brigitta, hey.
I feel like I'm kind of struggling with a little tiny thing. And I agree with 99% of what we've all talked about today. And I believe strongly in these things, and I work to try to change things. But it occurred to me, and I'm a big, you know, climate change and, you know, treat the world, treat our earth with respect and with healing and with kindness. And it occurred to me at one point that our organizations are turning into the exact same organizations that we decry. That we start forming our own lingo, we start forming our own biases and our own, and to a certain extent, our own hate. And I don't know if I fully understand where Scott was coming from, but I kind of feel like a little something there. I feel like, we welcome addicts and even murderers, and we're not going to welcome somebody who we don't fully understand, but we already don't like because of something that they're either associated with or doing. And I guess,
can you be a little bit more specific? Because all I heard was Jade and Rosie talking about we would be love, we would welcome people and give them a hug.
Well, like
Not
I
always.
said, I'm not sure. I'm not
If
really
they came to church, that's what, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly where my head is leading me at the moment. But for example, we talk about we don't like to be judged. So this person who is the ICE commander, I mean, I feel the same dislike and the same anger and the same, compelling desire to, set them people straight. But I also think that it's important, since we as a church believe in, talk to people, try to understand them, that we at least give this person some chance to explain where he's coming from. And, I feel like it's pretty hard to imagine he's coming from anywhere good. But maybe. I used to work for the Forest Service. I always told people who were afraid that we were cutting too many trees, I said, well, I can either be an activist and I can fight the Forest Service, or I can work in the Forest Service and actually design things to be more ecological, which I did. And I just feel like, we have to be cautious as a church not to judge people immediately on the news, which, by the way, I've found the news to be wrong many times, but to find out a little bit, or at least to let somebody stand and explain themselves before we get angry or before we try to do something, because it's so easy to form a church club or an environmental club or a gay rights club, and then all of a sudden everybody else is the enemy. And I don't want to see that happen. And I feel like this is a very smart and intelligent group, that we probably don't do that as much as some other groups do. But I do feel like there's something that we have to be cautious about.
Well, I'm trying to wrap things up, and Ana Rosa hasn't spoken, so
I feel like there's a difference here, because this person was leading the congregation. Like, if you're leading the congregation and hiding behind a Bible while you are actively, hatefully separating families, you cannot do that. Like, that's not okay. And I think that this is the dynamic that happens a lot, especially in Santa Barbara, especially on the Central Coast, where racists and Zionists hide behind their powerful positions, expecting people to not know that they're racist and Zionists. And that needs to be called out, because that will interrupt their power, and they don't deserve to have that power.
That's a very good point, but we also don't know if this person was actually doing some of the things that we find so agrarious. Maybe he was trying to get his unit to be more kind. I know that sounds ridiculous. Ridiculous, but not everybody who's involved in something goes along with it 100%.
Absolutely.
My husband was in the U.S. Army in Vietnam and was ordered to kill a civilian who was begging for mercy, and my husband said no.
Well, I don't think we should correlate the military with ICE. I mean, they're pulled from two completely radically different pools of people.
They are,
especially the way that they've been recruited as of late.
They are, but some of those people,
you could have a point, Brigitta. And once those activists were arrested and the journalists were arrested, if that pastor would have been first in line to call them to,
to share their point.
To call them to get rid of the charges, drop the charges.
That's true. That's true.
But he basically proved himself. That.
We also don't know if the news covers things like that. And, I agree. And not, like I said, 99.
If they're trying to, they might get arrested.
I just want to be cautious because I know that there are people who fall into circumstances or choose.